Rum is gone. It is the currency of New South Wales, and the newly anointed Australian government has just attempted to break its hold on the British colony, faced with open corruption and a shadow government masquerading as a military. William Bligh will attempt to break a cabal that has existed since the very founding of Australia. Yet one man demands that the rum flow, so long as it only flows for him and his compatriots. And Australia will step past the brink of rebellion and into a military dictatorship for the second time in 10 years. The year is 1808. This is the Rum Rebellion, and this is its story. Hello, and welcome back to the Historical Humans podcast. My name is Justin Woods, and I'm joined today by my fellow co host, Colum Coleman. And today, we are wondering where the rum has gone. This is the Rum Rebellion of Australia, and boy howdy is it an interesting one.
Yeah. This is one of those fun stories from history where there is, no matter how you do this, no narrative of the good guy involved. There is no Spartans versus Persians, There is no, us versus them. It's just two groups of horrible people being increasingly hostile to each other.
That just sounds like Australia in a nutshell.
This is our villain fight episode where all the antagonists just try to kill each other.
Oh, it's a good one, and this is a pretty interesting point in Australian history because it happens fairly early on, and one of my favorite characters from British/Australian history continuously just leaves a blight on history.
Oh, yes. We will get to him. He is going to be the sort of catalyst of this whole thing. Is going to be a man by the name of Captain William Bligh, a man so unlovable that he really never should have been made captain.
Rumor has it even his own family would mutiny against him.
No one liked this man. The only thing that ever kept him in authority was a rigid military adherence to discipline, which, fun fact, is not going to be present in Australia at the time of this rebellion because, there's a rum rebellion.
Where's me rum gone?
Yeah.
We make a lot of jokes, but rum was very important at this point in time. It was worth more than its own weight in gold.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So the fun thing about the Rum Rebellion is it occurs right out the gate in Australia's history. In 1790, 1788, the First Fleet arrives at Australia, and this is when the British decide that this giant continent in the middle of the ocean is theirs now. And just 4 years after that, the beginnings of this rebellion start. We don't get into the armed conflict until 1808, so about 20 years after the Australians get there. But it really doesn't have a good start to it. Like this colony starts from a place of being fucked up.
I mean, besides the fact that they began shipping their convicts there because they could no longer send them to North America, really sets Australia off on the right foot, I think.
Yeah. And the real first issue is that 2 years after the ships arrive in 1788, there's the British realize that just throwing prisoners onto a rock in the middle of nowhere doesn't exactly create society. So they implement what's called the New South Wales Corps, which is a regional military. It's the local garrison, the army that's meant to control at least part of Australia. And by 1792, just 2 years after the implementation of the system, it has already broken down. Thanks in large part to the absolute fucking corruption of this military.
It's just also when you have your military halfway across the world, literally across the world from where you you're based, it's easy for corruption to spread.
Yeah. See, the New South Wales Corps in 1792 decides that the people with the guns would be better at having a government than the people with the laws. So they just declare themselves to be the new governors of the colony.
Well, laws never stop me, but guns sure have.
Yep. And part of this is because of how the British government was operating at this time. And what the British government had done was they had recalled their current governor to England before a new governor had been appointed. So for 3 years, from 1792 to 1795 here, the military just decides that it's the government in the absence of any governor. Forget having an election. These are prisoners. They don't have rights.
Well, also, British governors were appointed, they weren't elected.
Yeah, that too. Also, the prisoners are Irish and probably Catholic, so more reasons for them to not have rights at this time. Welcome to British politics.
You know, I could get over the fact that they're prisoners, but the fact that they're Irish, it's an outrage.
Yep. Yep. Savages, savages, barely even human. The mantra of the British whenever meeting someone for more than 15 minutes outside London.
Oh, God. You know it's bad when Disney even sheds a light on it.
Yeah, when Walt Disney is calling you out on your bullshit. But yeah, so the Corps, in their freaking infinite wisdom here, during this takeover, they get used to having some pretty cushy benefits to being a military government with no oversight. The biggest ones are receiving land grants and prisoner labor as rewards for service. I see Bob's just made it to his first year of service. Here's 2 Irishmen to work on your land until the end of time for free.
Hey, wait a second. Which,
Oh, what's that, Bob? You don't have any land? Here's 500 acres we just took from those 2 people who have been living here for the past 6 years.
well, they took the land from the Aborigines more than anything, but yes.
Oh, yeah.
And this, believe it or not, was also in a period of time before England had fully outlawed slavery. I mean, I don't think they fully abolished it till 1806.
Yeah, no, they had not abolished it at the early stages here when we're sort of laying the groundwork for why the psychology of this rebellion is going to kick off. And that's because this place gets its own little warped culture bubble of what's normal, and in this case, prisoner slave labor is normalized, and it really shouldn't be.
You know, it's not slave labor if they're criminals, right? You know,
Yep.
what's the crime they committed? Ah, see, they were existing while Irish.
Yeah, it's just indentured servitude, debt bondage, crop sharing. Good old fashioned values.
Yeah. You work hard enough, maybe you'll sniff freedom.
Yep.
Terms and conditions may apply.
Yep. Now, the extent of these awards gets completely out of hand, to the point that by the time a new governor is able to get into office and declare a governorship of this colony, they're no longer awarding, these grants in terms of like, here's 40 acres, here's 200 acres. They're awarding them in the thousands. The single largest they will award will be 5,000 in one go. And a lot of the ranking officers would have multiple of these.
Jeez.
Effectively meaning that they own all the labor and they own all the land. So naturally, they should own all the wealth and products too, right?
Naturally.
The Corps here decides that they also are going to be the only people allowed to purchase goods off of incoming ships. That's right. If you're bringing in food or medicine or cloth or anything else, you're selling to a member of the New South Wales Corps, who will in turn ensure that it is fairly and equitable. Oh, look, they're price gouging.
That's the pure-blooded, unrestricted capitalism I know and love.
Yep. To make matters worse in the system prone for corruption, there is no money in New South Wales. Literally, no one has sent coins. There is no mint to make coins. There is no gold and silver with which to mint the coin. There is nothing. So most people start trading in the one thing that everyone would like to have but might never have a use for: the rum.
Oh, there's plenty of use for the rum.
Yep. Everyone would like to have it, but you might not have a use for it. So rum becomes money. And the value of a bottle of rum is determined, once again, by the supply and demand strings controlled by the New South Wales Corps. They're the only ones that can buy the rum coming into Australia. They're the only ones that can buy the goods. So if they want to sell it to you, you better pony up big time. But if you're selling it back to them, expect the price to be less than half.
Yeah, that's not great.
They're like automobile dealers, right? The second you drive it off the lot, it loses 3/4 of its value.
Yeah, but then you go to sell a used bottle of rum and it's twice the value you bought it for.
Yeah.
Like, what? How does that work?
Unfortunately, it just didn't work that way here. The New South Wales Corps set the price of rum. They controlled the trade of rum. They controlled whether or not it was a good year to have rum or a bad year to have rum, depending on whether or not they needed more rum. And this is where we're going to get the name of the rebellion, because the lovely little New South Wales Corps becomes nicknamed the Rum Corps because of their absolute fucking rum monopoly. This is the rum that shall be rebelling.
Yeah, I could see why they weren't so happy when a new governor would come in and say, "Hey guys, maybe we stop this."
Yeah. Now, unfortunately, or perhaps fortunately, the first two governors that come into office and put an end to this dictatorship aren't really effective at stopping the New South Wales Corps. And for about 11 years, this lovely little rum corps here gets it into their head that the governor is kind of like a figurehead. He's someone who's there to show that, yes, we're a real government. Nothing is wrong here, even as he is actively attempting to stop their rum trading, corruption, land grab, slave labor practice thing. And the British back home are getting kind of fed up with this bullshit. Because as much as the British doesn't care about Australia, as long as it stays on Australia, it is something of a bad look for them having all these things like the Rum Corps and the East India Company and the South China Sea Bubble. All these like rogue entities technically operating in the name of the British Crown.
Well, technically, the East India Company was not a part of the crown, it was a separate endeavor. However, in this instance, what had been occurring a lot was a lot of these ship captains would report back home, like any good sailor does, and they would start getting really pissed off because they were only allowed to sell to the rum corps and they weren't getting the free market value of their rum. They were going home and complaining that they weren't earning enough because of this monopoly.
Yep. Which is where we're going to enter into our wonderful anti-hero here, Captain William Bligh, who takes over as governor in 1806. And this is where the rebellion really starts to get going. This is where the rumblings start, because Bligh is most famous for being captain of the HMS Bounty, a ship that tried to kill him.
One of the most infamous instances of a mutiny, because they were out to sea and they set Bligh adrift, and he ended up sailing over 1,400 nautical miles before eventually getting rescued. And then he went with the new ship and hunted down his old ship, which had crashed on an island, and he ended up arresting or killing anyone that rebelled against him.
Yeah.
Who hadn't
Yeah.
been dead already.
Yeah. And because of this, Bligh is able to control the narrative of the mutiny. And thanks to his last name being that of Old English nobility, and the names of the surviving sailors to testify against him being those of petty little commoners from Wales and Scotland and other undesirable places, he, of course, is acquitted and declared that he did nothing wrong and is given this colony to go manage.
Which in itself is kind of a punishment, because that's what the British did a lot of. If you were a in the upper echelons of society, but you would run afoul with the British government, congratulations, you just got a brand new promotion to governor of this far off colony. Go on,
Yep.
Go get them.
Yep. Because being a governor is considered an honor. Where you're a governor is whether or not it's actually an insult. And New South Wales was definitely an insult. Bligh certainly does not do himself any favors during his trial for the mutiny aboard the Bounty. And he certainly does not attend any sort of anger management therapy, which this man desperately needed. This is the sort of man who would beat you to death in a parking lot because you sneezed in church.
But I just want to highlight the fact that at this point in time, with the sailing techniques that were available, the journey to Australia was still like over half a year. It was still like a 6 or 7 month journey endeavor just to get from London to New South Wales. So the fact that anyone would get declared governor there, it is a massive fuck you to them.
Yep.
And that also does play a small role in what had occurred with both the traders and with the last governors, because that 3 year span that it took to have a provincial governor, half of that time alone could have been spent with just travel going back and forth.
Oh yeah, for sure. The first military dictatorship of Australia is largely facilitated by general mismanagement in London, and the fact that it takes 6 months for you to realize something's wrong with your timetable.
Well, and also just to relay any sort of command or money too.
Yeah.
It's hard to say, oh, let's go do this in Australia when they're already halfway across the world, halfway across the calendar. It's summer in Australia when it's winter in London.
Yeah, and it's going to take you at least a year to realize, wait, we didn't put anyone on the boat. The governor's not on the boat.
But then you're getting all these angry ship captains coming back, like, those bastards, they're gouging the hell out of my rum.
Yeah, and the thing too is, with Wales and this stuff being a punishment, it does sort of explain why for the 11 years between the first dictatorship and Bligh, there isn't exactly anyone who's particularly capable of stopping the Rum Corps here from doing all the highly illegal acts that they are doing.
Which in the interim period, in the early 1800s, the United Kingdom was engrossed in a lot of the activities on mainland Europe, not to mention having just finished the war against the United States some 20 years prior. They're still reeling and trying to get their shit together. They were not in a position to effectively operate a multi-continental colony.
Yeah, for context, Napoleon is a thing right now, and anyone with a foot with territory in Europe is having a goddamn panic attack.
Yeah, they're shitting themselves 8 ways to Sunday right now.
Yeah, but anyway, when Bligh gets to Wales, when he gets to New South Wales, he inherits a colony that is in absolute crisis. There had been flooding recently that had wiped out all the local supplies, and all the trade ships that were meant to keep the colony afloat were nowhere to be seen. They had all been delayed because it takes a goddamn year to get here.
God, that's like the most absolutely annoying, obnoxious form of telephone you could possibly play.
Yep.
It's like,
Not,
Lord
not
Chancellor, what do we do here? Send it out? They give a response,
Yep.
they send it back. It's 12 months later, and you're like, well, that's not putting in anymore.
Yep. Not to mention the Rum Corps here was absolutely enraged with the office of the governor because the Rum Corps owns all wealth and owns all land. So those farms that got flooded, they belong to the Rum Corps. And where's all those delicious merchant ships that the Rum Corps likes to exploit? They're not here. Who's in charge of fixing the colony in the wake of natural disasters and trade crises? The governor's office. And what are they doing? They're sending the most angry man in England to come talk to them.
God. They sent the Karen to deal with the issues.
Yep. Because the only thing that can defeat a Karen is a Karen manager. And that is what they have done. Because the Rum Corps are a bunch of Karens.
Oh, no.
And so is Bligh, and it's going to be a Karen off.
Hey, I'm pretty sure I served with him in the Soviets. Karen off.
I thought it was Karkaroff, but okay.
But yeah, they basically did that, and Bligh really was not liked at all. Nobody who served under him was much a fan. He did have some level of respect given to him, but it was hard earned and hard fought, and he's still.
Yeah. There are two ways Bligh gets respect. The first is you have never met the man, and you know that he outranks you in the social hierarchy. So you play nice with him the first time you meet him. The other time is there's some sort of angry mob crisis, and Bligh saves your life. So you respect him for saving your life and ignore the fact that he may or may not have caused the angry mob.
Not to mention, by this point, he also had a level of folklore status, having survived an active mutiny that should have been his death sentence. I mean, they put him on like a tiny little boat, and he sailed thousands of miles over open ocean and survived, and then proceeded to hunt down his mutineers.
Yeah. He is a no mercy kind of man. And when he gets to New South Wales, down in Australia here, he immediately decides that this colony needs to be self-sufficient. So he just starts signing into law all these decrees to implement reforms. Every last one of these reforms is explicitly hostile to the Rum Corps. Like, he's just decided he doesn't like these people, and rather than try to work with them or find a way to slowly phase them out or give them something shiny to look at, he just picks up his walking stick and starts whacking them over the head like it's a game of whack-a-mole.
Yeah, I mean, his leadership style is a little abrasive, but the point still stands. He saw something that was broken and had attempted to fix it. Like that, you got to give him some level of credibility for, but, you know, his methodology leaves a lot to be desired.
Yeah. Now, the first thing he does, which is probably the, like, most beneficial thing for the colony as a whole, is he sets up what are called government farms. And these are little model farms with farmers on them, whose job it is to basically do your, like, elementary school tour of this is how a farm works for all the other farmers. And the purpose of this is to showcase the latest and greatest farming techniques from the city of London. This is sort of the agricultural sciences college of the time.
Oh no, it's quite literally the agriculture school. Like,
Yeah.
all right, guys, this is how you farm in this new environment. It's a little dry here.
Did you know if you take the cow patties and mix them with the dirt when you till it, the dirt gets better? And
Eat gas.
basically, this is a universal good, and it pisses off the Rum Corps. Because guess what these government farms do?
They took the land from the core.
Yep. They don't necessarily take land that the Corps has already claimed, but they do operate on some pretty nice acreage that the Corps had been eyeing to give itself as a Christmas bonus for a job well done.
God,
This is the meme of Obama putting the medal on Obama.
no,
just
even more realistic. This is Congress giving Congress a bonus for being Congress. We are Americans.
I thought that was just Congress. Like, that's not even a joke. That's just literally the United States Senate.
Frustrating. Yeah, I could see why people may not have been necessarily a fan of the Rum Corps.
Yep. And the next thing he does is he puts some government control on the trade, which means that the Corps can no longer have a monopoly by serving as intermediaries between the colonists and all the trade ships at the dock. No, there's now suddenly these government regulations. There's customs. There's taxes. There's a government fucking warehouse for all these goods to go into. Not your pocket, the warehouse.
I would also imagine too that it wasn't necessarily the pocket, but you saw the Rum Corps unloading the rum off of the ships that came in right into their own like bunkhouses.
Yeah, it's the bungalows. Then, like this is like in like almost escalating hostility to the Rum Corps here in the order we're doing this, because the next thing he does is he bans illegal stills. Australia is a penal colony, which means it's illegal to manufacture and produce alcohol.
Which is effectively like you're just like counterfeiting your own money. You're printing your own money in your backyard.
Yep, rum is the money. This isn't just an alcohol ban. This is also counterfeiting. And guess what? Every Rum Corps officer had in their backyard.
Their own still, yeah.
Yep, a fucking distillery. So they're mad at that because think about it. If you had your own goddamn mint and had spent the last, at this point it's 1806, 1807, last, let's say 15 years, just printing money whenever you wanted to buy something, you'd be fucking pissed they got taken away too.
I'm just laughing at this because in the grand scheme of things, I really, I'm not a fan of Bly by any stretch of the imagination, but the things he do here are kind of common sense reform, and the fact that they're so controversial and aggravate the Rum Corps to its core is kind of comedic, quite frankly.
Yeah. Rum is able to get around the Corps a little bit because he is not afraid of anything. He genuinely believes in like this like divine mandate extending from the king to him via a series of appointments, in the sense that like it's his birthright to tell you what to do, therefore you're going to do it.
Yeah.
This man does not have a concept of cooperation.
Why should he? With a name like Bly.
Yep.
But that's hilarious. So he just basically banned the printing of money, but then he also took it just a half step further, where he forbade the use of rum as a form of currency.
That's right. He banned the printing of the fake money, and then he banned the fake money. Which just goes to show you, he is on scorched earth level of a campaign here, where he is just finding every single way a rule has been broken and making sure you can't do that again.
But also, quite frankly, on the opposite side of it, you're just literally restoring order. That's all he's doing.
I know. He's finding every way they broke the rules and putting in a specific rule to stop them from doing that, even if they would never have a reason to try that again because of another rule you've already put into place.
But this to me doesn't come off as super vindictive. It comes off as just course correction. Like, all right, guys, I see you're trading rum. Let's stop the trade. And you know what? Since you've been trading it and making your own, let's maybe not make our own.
Yes, but you forget this as much as is sensible, creating a functioning government and not, I don't know, the Sicilian mafia. We're in a Karen-off here, so every little change to the neighborhood is a direct and personal attack on the lives of these core members. They just can't take it. I mean, this 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 man from England is coming in and just ruining their Australia, their beautiful new Australia, where they could live as kings, and no one cared.
Yeah, these guys were getting a pretty fat paycheck with very little oversight. And then finally the manager comes back into the office and they're like, "Oh, you mean I can't just take money out of the cash register when I'm not doing very great financially?"
Yep. Yeah, it's was it from the Community, the Darkest Timeline, where the guy just comes back with the pizza and everything's on fire.
Yeah.
This is that, except he's really fucking angry. The last thing he does, and this is the one thing that is actually an attack on the Rum Corps, is he begins a legal review of all the land grants in Australia. Now, the reason he does this is because the Corps had been acting as its own authority in granting these lands, meaning that a lot of these land grants probably don't have the governor's or, say, the representative from England's signature on them. At least not any way other than a forgery. So, he says, I don't think you're supposed to own all this land. The colony charter I have says no one's supposed to have any of this land yet because no one's paid me to get it. And therein lies the rub.
And it's not like they could pay Rum to pay him off anymore. He got rid of that avenue as well.
Yeah.
This man could have more rum than Jack Sparrow, and yet, look, he shot himself in the foot. He didn't do what he should have.
He refused it. He wants money. They don't have money. And effectively, he's probably wouldn't take too kindly to a bribe anyway because he's William Bligh and this man has no personality. But he is in the right to do this, like in everything else that he has done up to this point, because of the fact that most of these land grants and most of these convict labor contracts amount to, it's mine because I, a member of this military group, say so. Yeah, everything is basically being held hostage by a militia.
He who controls the weapons controls the land.
Act that we get to meet our second player of today's game. All right, in the Karen-off, right? We've been talking about Bligh and all the things that he does as Karen the manager. Well, now it's time to meet Karen the ex-manager.
Oh
no! See, Bligh goes directly in for butting heads with a man by the name of John MacArthur. Now, MacArthur had been one of the leading and preeminent members of the Rum Corps until he retired and took a golden parachute of 5,000 acres, the largest land grant in Australian history at that time.
So he was the one that got it. Got it.
Yep. And retired, making him the single largest landholder in all of Australia because it combined with everything else he owned.
And so he's sitting on well over 5,000 acres.
This man effectively, between all the things he owns, controls about half of the economy of the colony.
That's not corrupt at all when a civil servant ends up siphoning off half of the total value.
Yeah.
Yikes.
Yeah, and so this man, being the big man in the ranch, all these other ranches and farms, becomes sort of the representative for all the other core members who have farms and shit and things and rum distilleries that they don't want being taken away. Which means that Bly and he decide they have to destroy each other. And the hill they're going to die on is the dumbest fucking hill possible.
As if any normal petty dispute doesn't revolve around the tiniest little thing.
Yep. So what happens is in 1807, literally 1 year into Bly being here, there is open, almost violent hostility between Bly and MacArthur over what is known as the HMS Parramatta, which is a ship that MacArthur owns for the sole purposes of maintaining a trade monopoly with New South Wales. He owns the ship that brings in the goods, sells it to himself at the cost of shipping the good, and then sells it to the colony as if it had to be handmade, 7,000 miles away and personally walked here.
So he basically was importing the stuff himself, shipping it, paying the cost of shipping, and then fronting all of the costs onto the people buying the goods off of him.
Yep.
Interesting.
Now, what's happened is none of that is the reason why Bly takes issue with the Parramatta. What's happened is that in the day and age before digital resumes and centralized databases, the Parramatta has hired a sailor who is supposed to be a labor convict in Australia. They pick him up because Bly doesn't care. It's basically free labor. MacArthur doesn't care. It's basically free labor. But the convicts in Australia are not supposed to be able to get on boats and leave Australia.
That's kind of the whole point of them being on Australia.
Yep. So Bly levies the charge of against the Parramatta of harboring a fugitive. Now, this doesn't mean the ship's impounded. This doesn't mean that the ship can't do what it needs to do. It just needs to sail to Sydney, Australia, kick the man off the boat, and the owner of the vessel pay a small fine of £800.
That's not a small sum in the day and age.
Yeah, it's not. But comparatively to a lot of things, it is. Because technically, Bly can seize the ship.
Interesting.
And what MacArthur does is he not only refuses to pay the fine, he starts playing a very fun game of I've never heard of that, where he pretends he does not know he owns the Parramatta.
So when adjusted for inflation, that £800 is roughly £62,000.
Yeah.
So that is a shiny penny. That is a large sum for even a small lowly landowner. But yeah, the other thing with that too, though, that we haven't really talked about as much is if he paid that fine, that is effectively acknowledging it and accepting ownership over the ship, which, like you said, he didn't care about at this time, but that is still not a great look and could have other potential legal implications. I can kind of see why he would deny
he doesn't own the ship.
That's what I'm saying. I could see why. Yeah. It's like, you own a shipping company and one of your shipments is shown to be full of illegal and illicit goods, and you're like, I don't own that one. I don't know how that happened.
Yep. And so what happens is the Parramatta is ordered into Sydney Harbor in December, and it is grounded there. Its crew is confined to the vessel. No one is allowed on board. No one is allowed out. And the crew, until they can establish ownership and who has to pay this fine. The crew mutiny against Bly's order that they all stay on this ship in harbor. And they break into the town and go to dinner. And this gets reported back to Bly. And a bunch of the sailors and ship's officers and things come to Bly and say, yeah, we had to break your order. There's no food on that vessel. We haven't been restocked in months. We are literally starving. At which point, Bly says, that's a wonderful news. MacArthur is in violation of shipping regulations because his ship, which I'm accusing him of owning, doesn't have food. And you, as the owner of your vessel, are responsible for keeping the ship provisioned and maintained and crewed.
Oh, that's British bureaucracy in a nutshell. Oh, Bly must have been just wiggling with excitement on that one.
Yeah. He is so happy. Now, on the one hand, MacArthur is choosing to let his own employees starve to death like Jeff fucking Bezos rather than pay a government fine like Jeff fucking Bezos. But he fucks up because Bly does not care.
And
he just says, oh, look, you violated the regulation.
And he's going to get arrested for it. And I just, knowing how this whole thing has worked out, I wouldn't be surprised if along the way they just happened to come across other illegal goods or illegal things that MacArthur was doing to just really add to it.
Yep. They go to his house and they accuse him of having an illegal still, which he definitely had. Now, keep in mind, there is no like First Amendment right or anything else here in this colony about like illegal search and seizure. No, a man in a red jacket shows up one day and everything you own is his.
You're also in a British penal colony. There aren't really rights to be given there.
Yeah.
That's kind of one thing that they just, kind of have to acknowledge.
Yeah, and even though MacArthur is technically not one of the prisoners, he's one of the people exploiting them. That doesn't make it any better.
No, it's like a guard.
Do this to me. What is this? Opposite day?
It's effectively, if you want to break it into a modern sense, think of a modern prison with the four walls and the cells and the cages, and you have a prison guard, the warden, who just ended up stealing all of the commissary goods, selling it to other prison guards who are using control of the prisoners, and then subdividing the land around the prison, giving it to the guards, and then having them use the prisoners to work their new lands.
Yep. Now, all these charges, all these like corrupt things he's charging MacArthur with, from the Parramatta to the rum distillery to just being MacArthur, he also decides to throw onto the pile here libel.
Ooh.
Because MacArthur has not been taking this lying down. And he has had some choice words about the governor. And Bly, he can take an insult on the chin because he's the big, oh, look, he's beating a child.
Yeah, no, Bly is not the person you insult. Not because it's difficult. No, it's very easy to insult Bly. No, you don't insult him because next thing you know, your childhood home is on fire and he is pissing on your parents' grave. Like, this man does not know boundaries in terms of revenge or pettiness.
Yeah. This man flies off the fucking panhandle like you wouldn't believe. And so he decides that, over the past couple months, all the things of like publicly saying the governor's a tyrant, Bly is wrong, I'm being persecuted, those aren't just your opinions, man. That's libel against the governor. That's libel against the crown. You are spreading lies about our divine government. Let's arrest this fucker.
And arrest they did, as MacArthur was brought to trial on January 25th of 1808, where he promptly refused to recognize the judge, the Honorable Richard Atkins, and instead turns around and convinced the jury to refuse to recognize the validity of the court.
Yep.
Mainly because the entire jury was comprised of his peers from the New South Wales core members. It is literally his old coworkers and drinking buddies who are also complicit in many of the activities that he is accused of.
Yep. And if you're wondering how this could happen, keep in mind, Australia is a penal colony. The list of people who are eligible for jury duty is the New South Wales Corps and anyone who works in the governor's office. That is it. Because all the civilians are prisoners, and prisoners do not have the right to serve on a trial. They can be tried, but they cannot be the jury. And we're only about 20 years into this whole Australia thing. So, like, we're just getting into the question of, are the children of prisoners still prisoners? Or does your triple life sentence extend to the life of your children?
God, and then it also just ends up going even further because think about like a military tribunal where you're being tried with members of your own unit. Your unit is not going to convict you because you are buddies. They know what you're doing and they don't think there's an issue with it.
Yep.
Half the reason so many hate crimes went unpunished in the Deep South in the pretty much from Reconstruction to the modern day.
Yep. You can't. Your peers does not mean the people you drink with. The peers just means other people who have the right to vote.
And in this case, they're the same.
Yep. In this case, they're one and the same because it's such a small pool. Now, the resulting mayhem in the courtroom prevents the trial, as the jury is refusing to recognize the judge, and the judge is trying to dismiss the jury. So nothing can be done. And in response to this, Bligh imprisons MacArthur and threatens to charge the entire jury with treason for refusing to be a jury.
Damn. Treason, again, is not a light charge, especially to be thrown around so lackadaisically, even if there's any sort of contempt. Treason in the United Kingdom is a death sentence. It is a death warrant.
Yep. And given the fact that this jury is made up of soldiers, it's a summary execution type charge.
Jeez.
So, Bligh is attempting to regain control of his government by threatening his own military and anyone else who will enter a room with him for the next 24 hours. The commander of the Corps, a man named George Johnson, releases MacArthur from the prison that MacArthur is being held in because it's a New South Wales Corps prison. Because the New South Wales Corps runs all the prisons in the prison colony.
So they basically just walked in, used the key, unlocked the door, said, "All right, pup, you're good to go."
Yeah, it's, literally Johnson saw MacArthur and was like, "What's up, buddy?" And they hugged, and then MacArthur says, "Hey, I wanted to talk to you about something. Since you've just released me the day after I've been arrested on this, trial where we've refused to acknowledge the existence of the government, how about you go and refuse to acknowledge the existence of the government with your gun?" And Johnson thinks this is a great idea.
So I mean, they had a good thing going for them before this, so, might as well, right?
Yep. So Johnson agrees with MacArthur on the idea that it's Bligh who should be arrested and thrown in prison and charged with all these things, not MacArthur, not the members of the New South Wales Corps. They've done nothing wrong. They've just exploited criminals as slave labor. That's, probably actually one of the nicer things the British Empire has ever done. And so, Johnson takes his regiment of 400 Corps members to Bligh's residence in the middle of the night, and they storm the building.
God, the amount of times Bligh must have been woken up by an angry mob. The fact, if he had a nickel for every time, he'd have 2 nickels, which is just kind of surprising that it's happened twice.
I imagine he's waking up in his nightgown with like the PTSD, like back aboard the bounty, like, oh no, not again. Then he realizes he's in the governor's office, like, okay, I'm coming. Then he realizes that the banging on the door is the butt of a gun.
Or like waking up and like thinking that the crowd was just a flashback from the bounty, and then realizing, wait, no, you're real. Like point feels the gun is like, oh no, not again.
Yep. So
Uh,
Bly is taken hostage. He is arrested in his home, and the Corps members declare that Johnston, the leader of the Corps, the commander of this Rum Corps, shall be the governor of New South Wales. They declare martial law. The governor is gone. There is no law but ours, and we get Australia's second military dictatorship.
Yay! Meat's back on the menu, boys.
Yep. This one lasts for almost exactly 2 years. England is a little bit faster on getting someone else out to Australia this time, rather than the 3 years that the first one took. And the New South Wales Corps here refuses to let the new governor in until some preemptive concessions are made. And the new governor, Lachlan Macquarie, he declares a new government on January 1st in 1810. And the bargain he has struck with the Rum Rebellion is pretty interesting, because the first thing is something that the British government gets, which just basically says, under martial law, you couldn't give land grants. So any land grant from 1808 to 1810 is voided.
That's pretty good.
Yep.
Invalidated any new claims. I can respect that.
Yep. Anyone who participated in the rebellion shall in return be granted immunity from any and all charges.
That's not great, but I do understand a blanket pardon helping ease tensions and prevent it from occurring again.
Yep. For any crime committed since the start of the rebellion to the day the governor takes office. Yep. There is one exception to this, which is that Johnston, the leader of the rebellion, must face a court martial. Johnston is court-martialed and convicted in London in 1811, and he is given a very lenient sentence. In this guilty charge for treason against the crown, he is punished by being fired from the British military.
Okay, so that's also another fucked up thing in general. Is Johnston, while contributing and having a fairly major role in this, was not the key catalyst of the Rum Rebellion. He was more just the fall guy. The real person who should have been charged or court-martialed was MacArthur, who by this point had already left the office.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my god.
Oh, yeah, for sure. One, Johnston was being just dismissed from military service for committing treason is such a bullshit punishment. But he's the guy that led the army. If he had said no to MacArthur, the Rum Corps would probably have not followed MacArthur on the Rum Rebellion.
True.
But at the same time, MacArthur is the bastard starting this whole thing. And he will actually stay in exile in England until 1817. Because, fun fact, Lachlan, our lovely new governor, wants his head, but the British government does not.
Really?
So he spends 6 years in exile from Australia in London.
That's so fucking bizarre. You would
think so for 6 years.
You would genuinely think, though, that should you commit a crime in a colony of the British Crown, that you would also face punishment in the British Crown.
Nope. And he basically just stays in London as an exile from Australia until the governor's office just fucking gives up on trying to prosecute him and extradite him. and he's allowed to return in 1817
That is so bizarre.
as if nothing happened. And effectively, what all of this bullshit means is that the British government agreed to pretend that the Rum Rebellion did not occur, that the years of 1808 to 1810 are ripped off the calendar in Australia. They don't exist. It never happened. I have no recollection of that, Senator.
Well, when we talk about the general context of things, it was important to maintain face about these type of events, especially in the wake of the American Revolution. Or I know we talked about that previously, but that is still fresh on the mind of many of these politicians. It led to the direct collapse of Lord North's government, but also when you're controlling a large swath of land with many different colonies and assets, if you see one colony successfully revolt and get their freedom, you're going to see a domino effect where a bunch of other colonies throughout are going to also attempt the same thing. And that's something that they want to try and prevent. And the Rum Rebellion was a direct sign of weakness of the British government, which again, you highlighted this earlier, but you have a 5'7" angry Frenchman trouncing around most of Europe at this point. If he saw even a hint of weakness of the great British Empire, you bet your goddamn ass he's going to go after them with everything he's got, and he eventually does, but this is one instance that he maybe wasn't aware.
Yeah, yeah. Napoleon is at the height of his power during these events. Um, Napoleon's power is, I believe, 1796 to 1815. So this rebellion, and its aftermath are all during Napoleon basically shaking Europe like an Etch-a-Sketch. And the British don't have time to deal with this. They don't want to deal with this. They just want to pretend that to all the world that they are strong, they are unified, and they are invincible. And Australia is a pretty massive colony. New South Wales is a massive fucking colony. If something like that were to break away on the map, it would be more humiliating than America. Because even though it's less of a resource than America was at this point in its history, it's such a big space that you look visibly weakened. This is a design philosophy. It's actually the French design philosophy when they get their colonies in Africa going was to have one large interconnected blob so that when you looked at a map of France's holdings, it looked like they had a big, massive piece of territory instead of 20 small or medium sections like the Portuguese did.
Well, and France also did their colonies a little differently in that they were considered to be full parts of the French country, like of France. They weren't seen as separate colonies, and that's part of the reason why France actually still maintains a lot of its original colonies.
Yeah, and that's like it's just the point is just like the design
Yeah.
philosophy is Australia is this big thing on the map. Having it makes Britain look big and powerful on the map. Losing it, even if it's your least important colony, which it wasn't, but it was not like super, super valuable yet, makes you look massively weak. This isn't some Caribbean island that's a speck. This is a fucking continent.
Well, to be fair, at this point in time, they didn't know how big the continent of Australia was. They hadn't fully mapped it out nor discovered its full extent, which is a whole other thing. But yeah, at this point in time, the continent of Australia, the island of Australia, the value hadn't been seen. They truly just thought its value lay in it being a penal colony because of how isolated it was. It wasn't before the gold was found, it wasn't until all the rare earth minerals were located that they really figured out the value of Australia as a whole. So at this point, its value was basically peacocking, showing, hey, look, we control all this territory and we have a place to throw our prisoners.
Yeah. And even though the Rum Rebellion is not a rebellion to break away from the British Crown and the British government, in the same sense that a lot of other rebellions are, like anytime Scotland gets into a fight,
Or Ireland.
You know, but even though it's not like that, the sign that Britain doesn't have the strength to maintain direct authority in all its territory is blood in the water for the rest of Europe. Because it means that if they have a weakened hold here, maybe they have a weakened hold in the Dominican Republic or India or any of the other profitable, fun places that I might think it's valuable to snipe from them. And so it's about not showing weakness more than it is about not losing the colony, because Britain was never going to lose Australia to the Rum Rebellion. They were just going to have to roll back the common sense reforms that gave Australia a functioning government.
Well, and also let's talk about the fact too of if you know that a military is currently occupied with putting down a potential rebellion, aka the Rum Rebellion, it tends to show that your priorities may be a little distracted and you may not be totally considering how to protect your homeland. And we know Napoleon had been sizing up England at the time. The only reason he never went after England was because he didn't think he could be able to take over it very easily.
Yep. And speaking of the French, during the American Revolution, this was something the French did. The French spent a lot of the American Revolution sailing around the Caribbean, just sniping out isolated British colonies whose warships had to be redeployed to deal with the bullshit going on in the Carolinas.
God, the French really made out like bandits in terms of the American Revolutionary War because they really just positioned themselves to take advantage of it. But that's exactly why the British were being a little more cautious. Lessons learned. The British Empire grew as big because they learned certain lessons along the way, and this was definitely one of them. It's just it was kind of a win-win for them. Not only do they have someone who's willing to put it down, but they also get rid of one of their biggest nuisances to Australia.
Yep. Yep. And it's kind of a fun thing because there is no good guy in the Rum Rebellion because the rebels are unilaterally criminals. And the man who is poking the bear and provoking them has zero common sense and is just a generally spiteful, hateful man.
Look, I know this is going to be controversial in a lot of ways, but I think this is probably one of the few times in history that William Bligh wasn't entirely in the wrong.
Yep.
Was his handling of the scenario probably the best? No, but his policies made sense. It was pretty straightforward. It wasn't outrageous in the grand scheme of things. It's not like the shit he'd been pulling on the bounty. This was just kind of common sense reform, which usually a lot of people tend to advocate for, but it's when you're going up against the Australian mob, aka the New South Wales Corps, that you tend to run afoul with some folk.
Yeah. The issue that Bligh had wasn't that he was putting in bad policies. It was that he refused to make friends. Not with the New South Wales Corps, who is corrupt as hell, but with the general populace of Australia, with the prisoner convicts, with the other governing officials, with the men aboard who work aboard the ships. Like, he is working without the help of the social elite, and he refuses to sort of get himself any sort of backing, any sort of publicity for his reforms about helping people. And instead, it just becomes one antagonizing game of ping pong here between him and MacArthur. He gets himself bogged down in a feud with one man.
I mean, I do also understand it from another perspective of like, hey, I'm not going to just bend the knee to these people and I don't need to make friends to implement this policy. I could do whatever I want. And that's what inevitably bit him.
Yeah, and because he doesn't have he's not near England. He doesn't have a large exterior force to prop him up when everyone else gets mad, which is what screwed him over on the bounty because he was alone on that ship with just his crew for a very, very, very long time. And there was no real stops in British ports and other such things. where the authority of Britain could reassert itself over the dislike of Bligh.
Well, and that, my friends, is where the rum went. This is why the Rum Rebellion happened, and this is probably a great point for us to wrap up today's episode. Let us know your thoughts down below. Let us know your favorite rum-based drink. Do you have any final thoughts you'd like to add to this here conversation?
No, but I will say we are very, very excited to share with you that we are closing on 4 years of historical humans. Our very next podcast, which is titled The Condottieri Wars, will be our conclusion for season 4 of Historical Humans.
Golly, so
4
we're
years
almost on
with you all.
season 5.
We are very excited.
That is insane.
Yeah.
Where is the time gone?
Oh no, I want it back.
Where has the rum gone,
I want to
Colum?
be young again.
Where's the rum? But thank you guys for watching. We'll see you in the next one for the Condottieri Wars. And we will see you in season 5. Thank you guys for watching.